Imagine that you're Masahiro Sakurai, and that you just made Super Smash Bros. On the Nintendo 64. It makes a pretty decent splash and gives the N64 some energy. You're now told you need to make a sequel for the GameCube. You only have 13 months. With a tight schedule, destructive sleep schedule, many sacrifices, and limitless ambition, you get Super Smash Bros. Melee, a rushed, imperfect jewel. Melee is an example of a piece of art that stands the test of time, and also an example of creative ambition far exceeding one's physical capabilities. In other words, something as good as Melee shouldn't exist when you're putting your life on the line, whether you're a player or the person who made it. Artists are finicky creatures, and we often have an inability to accept positive feedback because of the high standards we set for ourselves and what we make. Inspiration strikes at the most inconvenient of times, but artists roll with it until they can't. Melee has been described by Sakurai as having the sharpest gameplay in the series, and to many people, it's defined by its gameplay, thanks to its long-lasting competitive scene. However, Sakurai's perspective on this has affected how he makes future entries, almost as if he's ashamed of the status that Melee has achieved. Now, we ask, whose perspective is more valid? The player's or the creator? In entries after Melee, combat has always felt slower, more rigid, more defined, floatier even. Sakurai always wanted to make an accessible fighting game that could be enjoyed by anyone in many ways, but seeing Melee competitors at top level play made him double down on making things more casual friendly, thus tripping. To me, and my current competitive perspective, the creation of Brawl specifically almost felt like a vindictive gesture towards anyone who thought Smash could be anything more than a party game, as if to say the audience's interpretation of this is wrong. Of course, there will always be people who disagree with the idea that Smash can be anything other than a party game, and those people are right to have their opinion. Art can be interpreted in many ways. I think the only opinion that's invalid is when you're saying one perspective is objectively wrong, or that you're not supposed to have that perspective. The issue is that since Brawl and other entries accommodate more casual play, there's no room for interpretation, almost as if people who disagree use this as evidence, saying even Sakurai hates how you fools are glitching around in a dumb party game. As for Melee players specifically, they stick to their game because that game allows movement unlike anything else. The way people move their controllers or hitboxes with a certain flow and rhythm is an art form in of itself. Every competitive player picks a character and uses the character's moves and knowledge of the game of how it works to play them to their best potential. If you gave a Melee player a blank easel and some oil paints, they'd likely make something incredibly avant-garde. To some people it may look like a mess, but the deeper you look into it, especially when they're painting, you see there's far more to appreciate than meets the eye. On the other side, when Melee players see more modern Smash games, they see restriction, like a paint-by-number coloring book. Can't move as freely, attacks don't come out as fast, exploits and glitches are patched out at the core, and of course, this isn't to say that people can't make amazing art with lesser tools, but it's easier to make art when you feel like you're allowed to, rather than focusing on spiting the person who won't give you proper pencils. As such, people took into their own hands. Project M, Project Plus, 4XM, HDR. Mods for more recent Smash games that bring movement and expression from Melee back, opening a whole new world of creativity. The recent Project Academia is also so polished, the content that it adds into the game almost feels official in its own right, adding new characters and new gameplay modes. The existence of Slippy lets people play Melee competitively online in their computers during the pandemic, where offline LAN tournaments basically did not exist. And when it comes to actually watching gameplay, you can still see creative expression. Sometimes the creation of art results in a miracle, and competitive Melee can be likened to that of a performance. The quote-unquote meta doesn't dictate who's best. People like Franz, Ali J, and Ringer have been making amazing work with Dr. Mario, Mewtwo, and Donkey Kong, reminding onlookers and naysayers alike that the meta of Melee is always changing, and that it doesn't really subscribe to the idea of no items, Fox only, final destination. And of course, if you don't play competitively, you kinda don't need to care. Again, the appeal of a game like Smash is being able to play it however you want. And also, many side events like Richi's Jungle Jam, combo contests, and target test speedruns show that gameplay can be experimented with further, that there truly isn't a limit to what people can do with this game. However, sometimes I wonder if Sakurai and all the naysayers have a point. My perspective on enjoying Melee and other games like it is unlike many others. It's a niche within a niche. Some people will forever be mystified why people choose to turn items off, and that's okay. I admit I definitely am biased towards playing a game this way, but I won't disallow other people to play however they want. People should interact with any medium however they see fit. But when I was 8 years old, playing Brawl on my old Wii, I had no idea about tier lists or how Meta Knight was dominating the meta. I just had my Wii remote and my nunchuck, and I thought Subspace was cool, and I wanted to play Sonic. When you view these games as party games or experiences with friends, they'll look much different than someone who only views them as venues for competition, experimentation, and maybe even money. But at the end of the day, as long as we're engaging with art in some form, that's all that matters. Because these games mean a lot to us, especially when we find them as kids. The fact that different people can see and engage with these games in vastly different ways, have different opinions on how it should be classified, and come up with new ways to iterate and transform them into new experiences, or deconstruct them to find what works about them, and analyze them, write about them, or make new pieces of media inspired by their essence. I think that's what makes them art. And even if you disagree, I'll always treasure the impact that the series has had on myself and others.